Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge, a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services focusing on the Port of Anchorage and the major commercial participants in the Cook Inlet region, providing customers with marine services specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting tonight's show. On the warning advisory, there are frost advisories out here for the Yakutat area and most of the central and northern southeast coast. That's for tonight. Temperatures expected to drop into the upper 20s to lower 30s, which would be cold enough for frost. And on the breakup map for May 3rd, 2015. Not a lot of changes from yesterday. Tanana River, a lot of open here, and there is about a 2-mile lead into the Yukon River there from the mouth of the Tanana due to the water that's flowing in, and it goes about, the lead's about 2 miles down from there, as you can just barely make out right in that area. And then on the Kuskokwim River, the tripod for the Bethel Ice Classic moved about 1 foot. Moving on to satellite imagery, pretty large mass of clouds here, an upper level disturbance over the southwest interior. That brought a fair amount of moisture to the southwest areas over the last 24 hours. Pilot Point had about 0.2 of an inch. Clark Point Airport there south of Dillingham picked up about 1/4 of an inch, and that ranged to nearly 1/2 inch of rain falling at Naknek and King Salmon. Otherwise, by contrast, Bethel had about 0.14 of an inch. And then both Kalskag and Aniak up in this area picked up about 1/4 of an inch. So a pretty widespread area of wetting to nearly soaking rains occurring over the southwest there. And this mostly just mid and high level moisture streaming off to the north. And then of course all the sunshine here to the west or to the east. And some clearing breaking out along the southwest coast. They're getting more of an offshore flow. And then this is the storm that came in and brought the storm force winds to the Aleutians today with gusts of 50 to 70 miles per hour across areas of the central Aleutians. Now front lifting northward there, so the wind's diminishing back, but a narrow area of storm force winds in advance of that front with gales surrounding that, and picking up about 0.2 of an inch of rain at Adak. So that was more of a wind producer than precipitation producer, and some clouds now spreading into the eastern Aleutians. Otherwise breaking out up here over the northwest interior. Low clouds and fog this morning out along the coastline. Dissipating this afternoon, and especially along the southwest coast, a little more of an offshore flow going on there, but that same sort of pattern extending up toward the Seward Peninsula, where it's mostly sunny. Northwest Valley is mostly sunny. A little more socked in along the Arctic coast there with flurries and fog along the Arctic coast and even into the North Slope areas there, but breaking out and improving during the afternoon hours. And the southeast coast got some clouds spreading over the southern areas in advance of this frontal system, but skies are clear and sunny to the north there. Temperatures rising to nearer into the lower 60s in some areas. Juneau had about 60. Skagway was roughly at about 61 this afternoon. Otherwise, here's the area of rain with that system over the southwest. It's going to stay pretty stationary here and weaken over the next day or two. So the rain will become more showery and become even more scattered tonight and into tomorrow, but kind of hang in this same area. And the low clouds and fog out over the eastern Bering Sea, all the sunshine over the interior, and then the low clouds and flurries up along the Arctic coast, and then the tight pressure gradient here on the north side of that low center that's moving up west of Adak there, and a narrow band of storm force winds associated with that, with the rain. For tonight, the front spreads rain into the eastern Aleutians and then possibly even up to the Alaska Peninsula, False Pass, King Cove, and possibly Cold Bay. It should stay south of the Pribilof, so I don't think any moisture will get up there tonight, and maybe better chance tomorrow. But generally back for an increase in the low clouds and fog along the southwest coast, mostly Nunivak Island northward here. through the Bering Strait. Look for areas of IFR to develop all through this area, and of course out towards St. Lawrence Island. Same pattern up along the Arctic coast, no change. Again, low clouds, flurries, and fog back on the increase during the nighttime hours and into early morning, but from about the Brooks Range southward, mostly fair and light winds. Here's still some scattered showers now. Not nearly the moisture as widespread as what we saw over the last 24 hours, but still that upper level disturbance staying right over the southwest interior and then kind of opening up into a trough and dissipating later tonight and tomorrow. But clear skies, light winds here along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. Same sort of pattern, mostly clear skies. Wind-sheltered areas here at the southeast coast where the skies are clear, which was about the northern half of the panhandle there, has the frost advisory out for the area there. For again, temperatures dropping 25 to 32 degrees tonight, or 25 to 36, I think they had in the statement. Risk of some moisture down along the south coast as this system slides by to the south across the Queen Charlotte's. But tomorrow maybe a risk of a shower over toward Hyder and Stewart. Otherwise, partly and mostly sunny day, if not completely sunny, especially over the north, kind of a offshore flow, weak offshore flow, but could see some higher gusts as high as 35 miles an hour in some of the channeled areas here over the north central inside waters. Northerly winds through Lynn Canal. Otherwise, light winds, North Gulf Coast, high pressure, lack of any gradient, so really light winds. Afternoon sea breezes about 15 miles per hour up Cook Inlet, maybe Prince William Sound. That's about it, with a little bit of a trough here over the interior. That could kick off an isolated shower over the eastern Alaska Range, possibly the White Mountain areas, and then still have some showers, probably enhancing in the afternoon due to the afternoon heating, helping to trigger those showers and build the clouds a little bit there, but nothing to the extent we saw today. Low clouds and fog again dissipating, clearing out along the coast a little better, a little more offshore flow, but no change up over the North Slope and the Arctic coast, same as today up there for tomorrow and probably Tuesday as well. And this front weakening, but spreading the moisture out. Look for rain and gusty winds here for the Alaska Peninsula, but no gales out. The only place there are gales are for these northerlies back on the west side of that low through tomorrow there for the western zones, but not even small craft advisories here for the central Aleutians. The gradient now north of the front, slackening out behind it. And then that thing moves up to the southwest coast, really washes out. So all we're looking for is some areas of light rain, drizzle, and fog for Kodiak Island. Back in along the southwest coast, just areas of, not really as solid as what I have drawn here. Back near Nunivak Island, that'll probably pass over the Pribilofs late tomorrow afternoon, evening, and night, and then be up north of the area, so breaking out to a few isolated showers behind that in that area. Otherwise, scattered showers from the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, a little bit more of an easterly wind here for the central Aleutians, but showers all the way out to Shemya and Attu, mostly in the form of rain. Otherwise, again, just a nice day here over the southeast coast. High pressure up over the Gulf of Alaska. Light north to northwest breezes there, 5 to 15 miles per hour. Could see maybe some gusts to 20 knots, but wind swinging around instead of the north, they'll be from the south there, especially for northern Lynn Canal in the afternoon hours. And then it looks like a little bit more widespread chance of some showers up here over the 40-mile country in the mountains north and east of Fairbanks. Also over the Alaska Range all the way around, a bit better chance of seeing some more shower activity there, while it's completely shut off now over the southwest except for what comes in with this weakening front. Mostly sunny here all along the west coast with those northeast offshore breezes going on in that area, but still no change on the Arctic coast. Low clouds and fog, Arctic coast, North Slope, breaking out over the North Slope and to a lesser extent in the Arctic coast during the afternoon hours. Temperatures this afternoon, first over the Panhandle, mostly in the 50s, although Skagway reached 60 degrees and is about the same in Juneau. Mid-50s along the North Gulf Coast, 55 Yakutat, Cordova, Valdez, Palmer, Anchorage, and also up at Gulkana, all at 55. These were 4 p.m. readings, not necessarily the highs. 53 at Northway, 54 at Delta. Fairbanks pushed up to 57, 56 over at Tanana, with Nenana at 54. Up to the north, Fort Yukon at 54 degrees in the Koyukuk Valley. Bettles at 52. Cooler in the Brooks Range, there are 39 both at Anatuvik and over at Arctic Village. And in the lower to mid 20s there for most of the Arctic coast. Warmest conditions in the east there with 28 at Kaktovik. Cooler back to the west, 21 at Point Lay, 18 degrees at Cape Lisburne, and 19 at Point Hope. Otherwise, mid 20s for the most part here over the northwest. 21 at Tin City. milder, approaching 40 degrees there on the south coast of the Seward Peninsula. 38 at Nome, 28 though at St. Mary's, kind of hanging a little below freezing here along the coast all the way around, with 30 degrees at St. Michael, Amonic, 30 degrees also at Macoriac, but 41 at Bethel, and kind of a range here, 39 degrees there at Sleepmute, but up to 53 at McGrath, with 57 here at Galena. For the Aleutians, mostly in the mid-40s, lower to mid-40s, except out at Shimia, only 39 degrees at 4 o'clock, 37 at St. Paul, but up to 42 at St. George, 43 in Unalaska, 44 at False Pass, Cold Bay had 50 today, and at Sandpoint with 52, King Salmon, 45 degrees. Lows tonight out that way, mostly in the mid to upper 30s here for Bristol Bay, lower 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, upper 30s for the Aleutians, and coldest up here on the Arctic coast, teens with 20s through the Brooks Range, and then upper 20s to lower 30s here through the interior valleys. Copper River Basin dropping into the mid-20s, and again the upper 20s to lower 30s here for the northern southeast coast back toward Yakutat, mid-30s there for Prince William Sound and most of south central Alaska. Highs tomorrow, quite an area of 60 showing up through the central Tanana Valley there in the greater Fairbanks area, all the way back down to McGrath, Susitna Valley warming up to or into the lower 60s for Talkeetna, Wasilla, Palmer, Anchorage, right around 60 tomorrow. And for the southeast coast here, 55 to 60 degrees about sums it up there. And a little cooler out along the coast, 49 Kodiak with 47 at Port Hayden, 46 the forecast high for False Pass, and 45 for Unalaska. Flying weather, good VFR here all along the southeast coast tomorrow. Even the interior looking really good. North of the Brooks Range, marginal VFR with areas of IFR up there to the north, especially in the morning hours. And then more widespread marginal VFR with IFR here along the west coast tomorrow morning will give way to just some areas of marginal VFR in the afternoon. Marginal conditions possible over southern Cook Inlet and then back down across Kodiak Island, increasing as you get down across the Alaska Peninsula, and then that band of IFR with that weakening weather front here right across the peninsula, coming up close to the Pribilof Islands, but hopefully staying just to the south and then wrapping back into the Attu and Shimia area. Marginal VFR, areas of across much of the Aleutians. Passes, Anaktuvuk, possible marginal VFR in that northern approach, otherwise good VFR through the pass and to the south. And that same forecast good for Adigan as well. Lake Clark and Merrill, ceilings visibility is pretty good. VFR for rainy, and for windy, ceilings visibility is unlimited there, as will be for Isabel and Mentasta. And for Tanita, VFR conditions either approach. Portage, good VFR on either entrance. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Looking at the freezing level map here, 2,000 feet up to St. Lawrence Island, cutting across Norton Sound and then right along the Alaska Range and dipping back down over the northern panhandle there. But at the surface here tomorrow morning right through this area, maybe a little bit farther south than what I have drawn there with the frost advisories out. The pocket of 2,000 feet here over Bristol Bay, and then 4,000 feet up over the Alaska Peninsula. Icing. Maybe some leftover areas of there over the southwest interior with what's left of that moisture, but this is all will be decreasing tonight and through tomorrow, and then probably be over by tomorrow night. And otherwise this will be coming up, sliding up along the Alaska Peninsula, extending back across the southern Bering Sea, edging its way northward toward the Pribilofs, but probably won't come across the area there until tomorrow evening and tomorrow night, and then breaking out icing free here over the central Aleutians, icing free for all the remainder of the interior and the southeast coast. Here's that upper disturbance that brought all the rain into the southwest interior today, still in the same position tomorrow, but weakening, opening up into a trough, beginning to dissipate a little bit. Higher pressure, more westerly flow here through the northern interior, up to 55 knots coming onto the northwest coast, and then the upper low there associated with a storm in the central Bering Sea, southwesterlies up to 55 into Kodiak Island. And looking at 9,000 feet here, just a weak 5 to 10 knot wind flow from the northeast through the central interior. Otherwise, either side of that, light variable winds, hardly anything at all. Westerlies at 10 on the eastern Arctic coast, but southeast 35 for the Alaska Peninsula. And some good east-northeasterlies there across the central Bering Sea, 45 knots there right across the Pribilofs. Same thing at 3,000 feet, a little more easterly at about 40 right across the Pribilof Islands and out to the west, 15 to 20, so lighter winds here over the central and eastern Aleutians. Stronger winds in across Alaska Peninsula, but only at about 30 knots, and some light north to northeasterlies here coming around that low there as it pulls in toward the Queen Charlottes and eventually onto the BC coastline and still have that very light northeasterly drift here, only 5 to 15 knots through the interior. Turbulence, none here from the Arctic coast all the way down into the Gulf of Alaska or the Panhandle. No significant turbulence. Could be some light mechanical to moderate chop over the Panhandle in areas for smaller aircraft, but that's about it. The more extensive area will be out here along the Alaska Peninsula. Occasional moderate chop up to the Pribilofs, and that wrapping back around into the far western Aleutians. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Another area where the Federal Aviation Administration is using technology in advancing aviation safety is in the use of remote weather cameras as a tool to aid pilots in making safe flight decisions. Hello, I'm Sheila Balistreri.
So in '99, we really started what we currently call the Alaska Weather Camera Program. We say Alaska because it's the only place in the FAA that has this. One, it's available through the internet so that the pilots, their family, their friends, they can all take a look at what the weather's like before you go there. In addition, we have all of that available within all of our flight service stations so that each flight service station technician can call up and look at weather real time. And with that, provide a better briefing, whether it's pre-flight or in-flight, for the pilots. By far the most popular thing we've ever done.
The weather camera system has been a good one. I'm sure you can tell from the, if you had access to the number of hits that they get that, on each site, that they're well used, and they save a lot of gasoline, they save a lot of time for passengers out turning around in weather and coming back when a pilot can just look at the camera and make a decision based on that rather than going out and actually looking at the weather.
So when we look at the cameras, and if it's a definite no-go situation, then we're not able, we don't send an airplane out to take a look at it and then have to just spend the gas and the time and energy to go out, take a look at it, and just turn around and come back.
By placing weather cameras throughout the state, we've certainly come a long way. Today, we have 55 cameras throughout the state, an investment of $7 million. 12 new sites are scheduled to be up and running by this October. This concept, I think, is stunning in its simplicity. The pilot goes online and can view 2 images for each location. The first shows what the site would look like in a perfectly clear day situation. The second shows current weather conditions. Pilots can now learn what the visibility is in the mountain pass they face and whether they want to fly through it before they take off. In many instances, they may decide not to fly, to hold on that flight for a while, depending upon what they see. And that's long before they set foot in the aircraft.
Alaska is a huge state, and the area covered so far by weather cams is comparatively small. In order for the project to be completed, 165 already identified sites need to be added. In what may be considered counterintuitive, many of these weather cameras are not placed at airports, but are positioned in or near mountain passes and other geographical areas, which are often used by pilots as navigational aids. Others are located at rural airports where there are no weather observers or co-located with automated weather systems. Pilots report that the value in these weather cameras is the real-time information they receive about destination and route conditions. Flight service specialists also have access to the weather camera images and routinely brief pilots with the most up-to-date information before takeoff and during their flight.
We use the weather cams in 2 basic ways here at the flight service station. For self-briefing, to get ready to be able to brief the pilots, to look at the weather cam where Where we have an airport with a weather report, we can compare what we see on the screen with what the weather report says. Where we do not have weather reports available, then we can look at the camera and again get a picture of what the weather is like at those locations.
When I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is pull up the weather cameras at all the destinations in the Southeast and check that against the actual reports at that station, and it gives you a lot better picture of what the weather's doing than what we used to enjoy with just the observation. And I'm sure all the pilots are doing the same thing. I know all of our pilots do. A well-placed camera looking in 3 different directions, there's nothing like that. Be able to see in real time what your weather actually looks like before you take off.
Cost benefit is quite a bit as far as saving us money. We don't launch a flight when we know that the weather is bad, when we can see it on the cameras that the weather is bad at our destination.
When the weather cam system was first proposed, there were some people who doubted its utility, and as they've come online, we've seen how the pilots really like to be able to see those pictures. They value it, and as they become available to us as briefers, we value it too.
I do thank you also for the cameras. I personally have used the cameras. I think that probably the one that's most used is the one over going through the pass into Lake Clark, and from time to time I get calls that it may not be functioning properly, which I'm pleased to say that Mr. Poe responds to very quickly.
During a recent independent study of Alaska pilots who have used the system, 68% reported making decisions to cancel or delay flights based on weather camera information. Pilots also reported that these decisions help them avoid additional fuel costs from flights that must be diverted or repeated due to bad weather. Now, these safety and economic advantages generated more than 2.3 million hits this past year on the FAA's Alaska WeatherCam website.
Light northerly winds along the outer coastline tomorrow at about 15 knots. More of a northeast direction here over the extreme south coast. Inside waters, Clarence Strait, northwest 20, seas at about 4 feet. And variable to north winds up to 20 knots. Some of the channeled areas seen some higher gusts. Northerlies 20 knots for Lynn Canal and Glacier Bay, seas at about 5 feet. And then for Tuesday, kind of a light west breeze up here on the north coast. Otherwise 15 to 20 knot winds here along the central and south coast with seas running 5 to 6 feet. No change here over the southern inside waters, and northwesterlies are variable to northwest at about 15. And then winds in the afternoon swinging around the south at about 20 knots there, especially for northern Lynn Canal, seas at about 4 feet. For Cook Inlet, southwest breeze all the way up into Knik Arm tomorrow, only at 10 knots though. Same thing for Prince William Sound, variable and then becoming southwest 10 in the afternoon. And with high pressure in this area, we've got southerly winds at 10 knots across the Barren Islands, taking a turn to the northeast here at 15 for the western North Gulf Coast, and then westerlies at 15 there for the central coast. Southeast 20 there on the east side of Kodiak Island. Light variable winds with 3-foot seas for Kamishak Bay, and variable to east at 10 there for Shelikof Strait. And for Tuesday, not a lot of change down here around Kodiak Island. Southeasterlies now at 20 knots for the Barren Islands in toward Kamishak Bay. South 15 for Cook Inlet south of the Forelands, north of the Forelands, southwest 15. And afternoon winds could kick up to 20 knots there for Prince William Sound. Kind of a sea breeze effect going on with higher pressure here in the Gulf of Alaska and a trough up over the interior. Otherwise, southerly winds here for the western Gulf Coast at 15 knots. And for Bristol Bay, east winds at 20. And small craft advisories here for the Alaska Peninsula tomorrow as that weakening front comes in from the west, southeast up to 30 knots with 10-foot seas there in the Pacific side of the peninsula, and 25 knots southwest of Kodiak Island. And then for Tuesday, southerlies at 15. That front really weakening now and right about through this area here. And so southerly winds maybe 20 knots there southwest of Sitkinak, south 15, pretty light now for the peninsula. East to 20 there in advance of whatever's left of that front for Bristol Bay, and seas at about 4 feet. Out in the Aleutians, gale force northerlies here in the western zones, otherwise small craft advisories on the Bering Sea side of the chain here, And all the Fox Islands under small craft advisories for east to southeast 25 to 30 knots. And then for Tuesday, northerlies 25 to 30 knots out here in the west. Small craft advisories for Adak and Atka, and 15 to 20 knot southeast winds for the Fox Islands. And for the southwest coast, north of Nunivak Island, northwest winds 20 knots. That extends up across St. Lawrence Island. Northeast 25 for the northern Bering Sea west to St. Matthew Island. Easterlies at 30 there for the Pribilofs. East 15 southwest of Nunivak Island. And for Tuesday, 20 knot easterlies here in this area, otherwise dropping back a little bit here north of the island with 25 knot small craft advisory winds there across St. Lawrence Island down into the northern Bering Sea, and the Pribilofs coming down to 20. For the Arctic coast, northerlies at 10 knots there from Wales all the way up to Cape Thompson and these western capes, Cape Lisburne. And for the western Arctic coast here, north at 10, for the central coast, northwest at 10, then kind of a variable light wind condition here along the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline. And then those still kind of stay light, a little more northerly here, except over toward Kaktovik, the demarcation point, where they'll be west at 10, but light north winds at 10 knots of the central coast, northeast 15. And look for Wales to Cape Thompson, northerlies picking up to about 20 knots. And for tonight, the showers beginning a little less numerous and starting to become more scattered here over the southwest interior with mostly cloudy skies. Little clouds and fog along the coast, flurries and fog along the Arctic coast. Fair, no wind here over the interior. And frost advisories for the northern panhandle. Chance a little moisture down over the southern areas as that system slides by to the south. And then rain moving into the eastern Aleutians with an increase in the winds, eventually into the Alaska Peninsula, staying south of the Pribilofs. And then that front elongates eastward, spreads some rain to the Alaska Peninsula tomorrow and almost up to St. George Island. Showers still scattered around the southwest interior, otherwise sunny conditions. More showers now up over the eastern interior on Tuesday.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.